Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, we have never seen anything of this magnitude. Authorities scramble and over 1,000 people are feared dead after a fierce cyclone ripped through Mozambique. Around 90% of the city of Beira has been destroyed and the rains just keep coming. Also, the US's top diplomat for Africa meets with Cameroon's president to call for the government to do more to try and negotiate its way out of a violent standoff with Anglophone separatists and a crackdown on opposition figures. And Sierra Leone tries to get its electricity supply into shipshape by generating supply for Freetown from a Turkish vessel berthed in the capital's seas. But first, Mozambique's still struggling with the aftermath of a devastating cyclone that's now believed to have left more than 1,000 people dead. Cyclone Idai slammed into southern Africa last Thursday, and rescue workers have struggled to cope since. Around 90% of the central city of Beira has been damaged or destroyed, and there are fears that ongoing heavy rains could just make things worse. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
This man had to climb a tree to save his life. Some residents were rescued, but many others were not as lucky. Beira is one of Mozambique's biggest towns. It has 500,000 inhabitants. President Filipe Nyusi flew above the devastated area. He said he feared the death toll could exceed 1,000.
We've put rescue teams in place, and we have asked our partners for more help. We have rescue equipment, volunteers and doctors arriving now in Maputo. I've been asked, why are foreigners coming here? It's because they know how to deal with these situations, and they're not charging us for their support.
According to the government, more than 100,000 people will now need food aid. Some Beira residents witnessed horrifying scenes.
Flying sheets of metal decapitated people. Others are in hospital. It's really bad. No one is rescuing us here.
I was sleeping at home and suddenly the roof flew away. I couldn't find the keys to go out. I called for help. We were screaming, but no one came.
The cyclone and torrential rains also struck neighbouring Zimbabwe, where dozens of people have been killed. The government said the country had suffered the worst infrastructural damage in its history.
In neighbouring Zimbabwe, Cyclone Idai has left at least 98 dead and over 200 people are still missing. The extreme weather washed away homes and bridges and caused landslides. Emergency services are struggling to cope. Families have already started burying those that they've lost, and the government's warned that, from what they've seen so far, the country's suffered its worst ever damage to infrastructure. Well, Ryan Truscott joins us now with more from Harare. Ryan, how widespread is the damage in Zimbabwe?
Well, it was mainly concentrated in two areas, Chimanimani and Chipinge, along the eastern border. But it does look to have been severe. We're only getting a sense of that now. Bridges have been destroyed. Roads have been blocked by rock falls. In Chimanimani, which is a town high up in the mountains, houses were destroyed by a rock fall during the worst of the storm on Friday night. That's where some of those 98 fatalities have occurred. The government has put out a list of what it's now going to disperse to start repairing the damage, and that includes $50 million for infrastructure restoration and $25 million to fix roads and bridges.
So what kind of conditions are rescue workers working in at the moment? Have they been able to make much of a difference?
Well, the main problem is that the affected areas have been cut off from the rest of the country. The cyclone struck on Friday night, and only today the army has managed to reach Chimanimani and Chipinge. The second problem is that soldiers have had to get to these areas mostly on foot. The low cloud cover and the mist that is still covering these areas means that helicopters can't safely be used. So what's happened is that the communities themselves have had to make a plan. In Chimanimani, which is a place normally popular with tourists on hiking holidays, the main hotel has been turned into an emergency shelter. Nearly 500 people who've lost homes have had to take refuge there. And then the Roman Catholic Church in the town has had to store bodies of the dead because there's no mortuary. And without contact with the outside world, families haven't been able to get official burial orders that will allow them to bury their loved ones.
And how prepared was Zimbabwe for Cyclone Idai? I mean, it wasn't a surprise that it was coming.
No, you're right. And I think that the authorities, although they're doing what they can in terms of rescue operations now, the country didn't seem to have been well prepared for a disaster of this magnitude. Even state media is admitting that. The critics say that this isn't the first time Zimbabwe's experienced something like this. It periodically has floods, but the government budgets only fairly small sums to civil protection. In the 2019 budget, I think the Department of Civil Protection got less than the amount allocated for wages at state residences. And President Mnangagwa himself today said that this will be a learning curve for the country. He says it's got to rethink disaster preparedness because this sort of thing will happen again.
Thanks very much, Ryan Truss got that for us in Harare. Now, pro-government groups in Cameroon have protested against the US's criticism of Yaoundé's tackling of an Anglophone uprising. Washington's top diplomat for Africa was in the country on Monday. The US Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs has also called for the release of opposition leader Maurice Kamto. Indira Etting tells us more.
The visiting U.S. Assistant Secretary for African Affairs, Thibon Nagy, met with Cameroon's President Paul Biya Monday in Yaoundé. Central on talks between both men was the political and security crisis in Cameroon caused by the two-year-old Anglophone conflict in the English-speaking northwest and southwest regions of the largely Francophone country. At the end of the meeting, Thibon Nagy said the Cameroon people need a peaceful, stable and prosperous country, which is the best for them. The U.S. diplomat is on record to have criticized the government of Cameroon's handling of the Anglophone crisis, saying the regime is not doing enough to bring an end to the crisis. He has called for sincere and frank dialogue between the warring parties. Meantime, the crisis continues to escalate as a security officer was allegedly burnt alive in the northwest region on Saturday. Fierce gun battles followed the discovery of the officer's body in a nearby bush. Now, it is also speculated that President Paul Biya and the U.S. diplomat talked on the continued detention of Maurice Kamto, who has continued to claim he won the 2018 presidential elections and not President Paul Biya. It should be noted that Kamto and about 200 members of his Cameroon Renaissance Movement's political party are being detained in several detention centers across the country since January this year.
Indira Etting there for us. Now, Congolese rumba singer Kofi Olomide has been sentenced in absentia to 2 years in prison for the statutory rape of one of his former dancers when she was just 15. That sentence was handed down by a French court. The singer, whose real name is Antoine Agbepa Mumba, was first charged with aggravated rape in 2012, but the charges were later reduced. He fled to DR Congo in 2009 after a French warrant for his arrest was issued. Olomide went on trial after 4 former dancers claimed that he sexually abused them between 2002 and 2006. He's faced other charges of violence in the past and in 2016 was briefly jailed in DR Congo for kicking one of his dancers. Less than 20% of homes in Sierra Leone have reliable access to electricity. The energy shortage not only makes people's day-to-day lives more difficult, but also has a disastrous effect on the economy. In a bid to make up the shortfall, the government struck a deal with a Turkish company who literally ships in a fix for Freetown's electricity problems. Frank Kersey has the story.
A floating lifeline with the power to transform a city's economy. The second power ship from Turkish company Car Power Ship anchored off Sierra Leone on the 4th of March. The floating power plant's extra superpower is its speed. Once docked, it needs less than a month to start generating electricity.
We are supplying 85% of the electricity demand of Sierra Leone. The power ship can generate electricity either via using fuel oil or natural gas. With the substation on the deck, we connect to the national grid and generate electricity and dispatch electricity to the national grid.
Sierra Leone needed a rapid solution for a chronic issue. Daily power cuts were having a disastrous effect on the economy.
With the agreement that we have with Car Power, our government is saving about $18 million for the 2 years. We chose Car Power because it provided an immediate solution, which is what we wanted. Emergency power, so to speak, because developing a project proposal, developing a conventional proposal for the generation of electricity takes a long time. And when you have a Car Power, which has its own solution in a ship, it's just a matter of really bringing the ship more in it and doing the necessary connections.
A more stable electricity supply from the first ship is already transforming life in the capital. The Aberdeen Women's Centre can now run all its equipment at once.
We're doing maternity here. It was getting very difficult about the light system. We was using generator for 24 hours. Even in the theater, there's some machine we cannot use it when we are using generator. But now we are getting the electricity from the Car Power ship. We are using all our appearances, all of them.
Power ships may be a quick fix for the capital, but Sierra Leone will have to learn from past mistakes to reliably power the remaining 85% of the nation.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.